You pour the coffee. You scoop almond butter onto your toast. You bite into an apple. A breakfast that took you 4 minutes, and you never once think about who made it possible. It wasn't a farmer. It wasn't a scientist. It was an insect smaller than your fingernail. Nutritionists have a phrase for it. Roughly 1 in 3 bites of food on an average plate exists because a bee, at some point, visited a flower first. For 99% of human history, that insect was the difference between starving and surviving. 8,000 years ago, in a cave near Valencia, Spain, someone painted a man dangling from ropes, reaching into a crack in the rock, surrounded by furious dots swarming around his head. Archaeologists call it the Araña Cave honey hunter scene. It's one of the oldest images of a human risking his life for food that wasn't meat, wasn't fruit, wasn't grain. It was honey. He climbed 40 feet on vines with nothing but smoke and nerve to steal what the bees had spent months building. That risk wasn't rare. It was routine. And it wasn't unique to Spain. Honey hunting scenes show up in rock art across Zimbabwe, in the Drakensberg Mountains, and in Arnhem Land in northern Australia, painted by people who never met each other, separated by oceans and tens of thousands of years. Different continents, same insect, same risk, same reward. In 2015, a research team led by archaeologist Melanie Rofet-Salco tested pottery shards from more than 20 Neolithic sites across Europe and the Near East. The chemical signature of beeswax showed up again and again in vessels dated to 7000 BCE. Beeswax for waterproofing pots, beeswax for medicine, beeswax for sealing tombs. 9,000 years ago, before the wheel, before writing, before bronze, humans had already built an economy around an insect. Now some of you are thinking, fine, but that was honey hunting. That's not the same as bees running civilization. People just liked something sweet. Here's the part that stops most people. Bees didn't start working for humans 9,000 years ago. They'd already been running the planet's entire food system for over 100 million years before a single human existed. Flowering plants and pollinating insects evolved together, trading nectar for pollen transport, slowly building the relationship that eventually produced almonds, apples, coffee, cacao, and the squash on your dinner table. Humans didn't invent agriculture from nothing. Humans inherited a planet that bees had already spent 100 million years arranging into edible form. So when early farmers domesticated wheat and barley around 9000 BCE in the Fertile Crescent, they were working with crops that didn't need bees at all. Grains self-pollinate or rely on wind. That's exactly why those crops came first. But the moment humans wanted variety, wanted fruit, wanted oil, wanted color and flavor beyond a bowl of grain, they walked straight back into the insect's territory. By 2400 BCE, ancient Egyptians were running professional apiaries. Reliefs from the Sun Temple of Neusser at Abu Ghurab show beekeepers smoking hives, pouring honey into jars, managing bees with the same seriousness as managing cattle. The bee became the royal symbol of Lower Egypt. When the two kingdoms unified around 3100 BCE, the bee was stitched into the pharaoh's title itself. A king's power was symbolically tied to an insect's image, 4,000 years before anyone understood what pollination even was. Across the ocean, the Maya built something stranger. They didn't just keep bees, they worshipped one. Muzen Cab, the descending bee god, appears in the Madrid Codex overseeing the keeping of Melipona bees, a stingless species native to the Yucatan. Entire villages organized their calendar of religious festivals around the honey harvest. Losing a hive wasn't a farming setback. It was treated as a spiritual failure. When Spanish colonizers later introduced European honeybees to the region, the newcomers outcompeted the gentler native species in many areas, and centuries of Maya beekeeping knowledge nearly vanished along with them, a quiet collapse most history books never even mention. Then jump forward to medieval Europe, and the pattern repeats again in an entirely different form. The church needed pure beeswax candles for the altar, since tallow was considered unfit for sacred use. Monasteries became some of the largest beekeeping operations in Europe. Peasants paid feudal tithes in honey and wax, centuries before sugar from distant colonies ever reached an ordinary table. For most of European history, an insect quite literally lit every church and sweetened every meal. Here's the comparison worth sitting with. An Egyptian beekeeper 4,000 years ago and a commercial beekeeper today are doing, structurally, the exact same job. They load hives onto transport, smoke the bees calm, move them to where the flowers are, and harvest the result. The technology changed completely. The dependency never did. And today, that dependency has scaled into something almost absurd. Each February, roughly 2 million beehives are trucked into California's Central Valley on flatbed semis. Entomologists routinely describe it as the largest managed pollination event on Earth. Those bees pollinate the almond bloom, a single crop responsible for over 80% of the world's almond supply. No bees, no almond milk, no almond flour, no almonds at all for the entire planet, for one entire growing season. The same trucks then move on to cherries, blueberries, and sunflowers, chasing the bloom state by state, all season long. The Food and Agriculture Organization estimates that pollinators, mostly bees, contribute to roughly 1/3 of global food production by volume. Not 1/3 of crop types. 1/3 of the actual food humans eat, measured in tonnage. Coffee yields drop measurably without nearby bee populations. Cacao, the plant behind chocolate, is pollinated almost entirely by tiny midges and bees working together in the dark. Beneath the forest canopy, a relationship most people will never see and will almost certainly never thank. Even the cotton in your shirt and the canola oil in your kitchen trace back to the same quiet transaction between flower and insect. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable. In 2006, beekeepers across the United States started reporting something new. Healthy colonies were vanishing overnight. No dead bodies, no obvious disease, just empty hives. Researchers, including entomologist Dennis von Engelsdorp at the University of Maryland, spent years tracking what became known as colony collapse disorder. Pesticide exposure, parasitic mites, habitat loss, and nutritional stress all interact, weakening colonies until they quietly fail to return. Some winters since then have seen beekeepers in the U.S. lose over 40% of their managed colonies. 40%. Imagine any other industry absorbing that loss every single year and still managing to function. Economists have tried to price the damage, and estimates for the value bees add to global agriculture each year run into the hundreds of billions of dollars, a number with no realistic backup plan behind it. Engineers have actually tried to build that backup plan. Harvard researchers built tiny flying robo-bees. A retailer once even filed a patent for drone-based pollination. Every attempt so far pollinates a handful of flowers in a lab at enormous cost, with none of the speed, precision, or sheer volume of a single wild colony working a single orchard for one quiet afternoon. 10,000 years of human engineering and the cheapest, most efficient pollination technology on the planet is still the original one. So picture the honey hunter on that cave wall in Spain again, hanging from a vine, smoke in one hand, surrounded by a furious cloud of insects he didn't understand but desperately needed. Now picture a beekeeper today, checking hive health on a tablet, watching the same insect, still essential, still fragile, still fundamentally in charge of whether next year's harvest happens at all. 10,000 years separate those two people. The tools changed completely. The relationship never did. We built pyramids. We split the atom. We put machines on Mars. And we still cannot replace what a bee does for free, every single day, without complaint, without wages, without a contract, and without ever once asking for credit. So the next time you eat breakfast, pour the coffee, taste the almond, bite the apple, remember what you're actually looking at. Not a meal you earned. A bill that's been quietly paid by an insect for 10,000 years and is, right now, still coming due.